the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you. You're the one I can't let go. In your arms I find my home. Love, sweet love, it's you I'm dreaming of. Every moment with you feels like a gift.
Okay, from the addresses you gave me, she gave birth to 2 sons and a daughter. Chuck quickly sat down, unable to speak. Yomi, this is Uche. Where is the daughter now? Oh, hi Uche. I knew I was on speakerphone. Well, I was told by one of the neighbors that the girl's father came to take her some 3 years ago. Her father? Are you sure? Stanley asked. Stanley, I am getting the feeling that this assignment is way bigger than I thought. Well, according to the third house I visited, the girl's father was a regular. By the way, did you know that those houses are brothels? Who is her father? Chuck asked impatiently, cutting him off. He was one of her regulars, like a boyfriend. He became born again and broke it off with her, and when he found out about his daughter, he took her by force, dragged the girl from her mother, a prostitute. Then she's safe. If she has a father who rescued her from that filthy life, he's probably doing right by her, Stanley stated. Okay, that's where it gets weird. Last week, the prostitute, Patience, received an urgent call from someone claiming to be her daughter, and the girl's only words were, "Mama, please come get me. He's a monster." Chuck got to his feet. You are sure about this? You know I'm thorough. What do you want me to do next? Find the girl. To find the girl, I have to find the mother first. Leave the mother out of the equation for now. Focus on finding the girl. Okay, I'll get back to you. Did you by any chance find out her name? Chuck asked. Better than that. I have a picture of her from 3 years back. Should I send it? Right away. According to the neighbor, her name is Pearl. We'll send right away. The phone went dead. Thank God for small messes, I guess, Stanley said, looking expectantly at Chuck. I am relieved that my mother didn't turn her into a call girl, but then she called him a monster and preferred the brothel life to living with him. Who knows what she's dealing with? One victory at a time, buddy. And besides, you'll find her and spoil her. Take joy in the fact that she will soon become the country's latest princess soon. Chuck managed a smile and sat down again, feeling a little relieved. Thanks guys for always being here. Not just for today, but always. You do the same for us, Uche replied. Chuck's phone beeped and he looked at it. There she is, he said and showed Pearl's picture to his friends. She's a beauty. I give it to your mom. She knows how to give birth to beautiful children. This one will break a lot of hearts one day, Stanley smiled. Wow, I look forward to playing Big Brother again. They all smiled. Chuck felt something light up in him. For the first time, he felt all would be well. This was turning out to be one of his most memorable holidays. First, he found love, then a sister. Love? Since when did he love her? He asked himself. Since he could run to her to find solace. Got to run, he said to his friends. Have dinner with Helen. He left quickly before they could ask him questions. There was no way he was going to give them answers to something he didn't understand. Helen sat in front of the mirror, putting finishing touches to her makeup. Her discussion with Emma throbbing all over her mind. Could it be possible, she asked herself, that refusing to sleep with Chuck was the key to his heart? Wouldn't he just go and find some other woman who would be more than willing? Why would he stay with her if she would not give him her body? Sharing a bed, wasn't that part of the relationship? She was so confused. She was afraid that denying him her body would drive him away from her. What probably worked for Mma, she wasn't sure would work for her. Chuck and Uche may be brothers, but they were two different people. On the other hand, if she slept with him and he forgets the moment he lands in London, and then come next holiday with another girl, it would kill her, she concluded. Then again, if she sleeps with him and the next morning remembers she has a husband, she would have committed adultery. She got up from the chair, feeling like she was never going to make up her mind on the matter. She went to inspect her attire for the evening. Afterwards, she sat on her bed, going through the contents of her purse, making sure she had all the necessary. She had the doorbell and got up. She had all night to decide if she was going to sleep with Chuck or not. She told herself as she left the bedroom. Helen opened the door and found him leaning casually on the door, and her heart skipped several beats just by looking at him, rendering her speechless. "Hi," she said at last when her tongue decided to unglue itself from the roof of her mouth. He smiled at her lazily and slowly looked at her from head to toe. Her body warmed. Helen had the urge to fan herself, but to her surprise, she was capable of resisting that urge. "Hi, you," he said, looking up at last. "Didn't your mother teach you it's rude to look at a woman like that?" she said for lack of nothing else to say. And then, feeling acutely embarrassed, it sounded like she couldn't wait for his verdict. "I don't understand," he said, moving closer to her. "How was I looking at you?" She took a step back involuntarily, but thinking that was a cowardice move, she stayed put. She was tired of running from this man, from her feelings, and from fate. "Answer me, Helen. How was I looking at you?" Like, you know what you did?" she said, turning away from him to go into the house. He laughed and caught up with her. "You are wrong. My mother taught me at an early age to embrace the pleasures of the flesh." She looked at him horrified. "You're lying." "Maybe. But how else is a man supposed to let a woman know how he feels, what he wants, or what is uppermost in his mind?" "Well, Helen," she told herself, "if you had doubts before, no more. He had just confirmed what he wants from you is your body. What he feels is lost. It was time to make a decision," she said to herself. But all thoughts were cleared from her mind when she felt his lips on hers. She gave all that she was into the soul-searing kiss. How could Ma be right, she thought. How could something so strong, so powerful, so potent, beyond this earth be wrong because of a piece of paper? "Now you're ready," he smiled. "Shall we? Or should we skip dinner?" "We should," she said quickly, too quickly, turning to get her purse from the bedroom. Realizing too late that was the wrong answer when she felt footsteps. "What I meant was, we should leave for dinner." "I know," he laughed. She didn't wait anymore. That husky laugh of his could make her forget herself and decide dinner was not important at all. She hurried out before her treacherous body betrayed her. She could hear him laughing softly as he followed her out. She didn't understand why she was running from the very thing she wanted with every fiber of her being. Taking a deep breath, she entered the car. He was still with Uche's car, she noticed, trying to distract herself into thinking normal thoughts for the duration of the date. Just maybe she might be able to keep her cool and make the right choice. Helen followed Chuck into the most elegant restaurant she had ever seen or been to. She was awed by the courteous way they were led to their table by the manager himself. Helen smiled at him as she sat down on the seat he had drawn out for her. Chuck sat down and smiled back. The waiter offered him the wine list. She watched him select one. "This place is very beautiful." "Yeah, it has its charms. What would you have?" he asked. She picked up the menu. She didn't recognize half of the things on the menu, though the familiarity of it all seemed to dance about somewhere in her mind, but she couldn't seem to reach it. Giving up, she watched from the corners of her menu as he concentrated on it. She was relieved when a waiter arrived with the wine and poured a little for Chuck to taste. He gave him a nod of approval, and the waiter poured the wine. It all seemed familiar to her. She could feel that she had lived in this world, gotten this kind of treatment. Yet, it felt like lifetimes ago, like it never happened. "Are you all right?" he asked. She looked up and smiled. Lost in her thoughts, she had lowered the menu. He had glimpsed the series of disturbing emotions passing through her face. "I am fine," she answered. "You haven't tasted your wine?" he stated, and signaled for the waiter. She picked up the wine glass and sipped. "You know, I have just realized I don't know much about you." Helen quickly dropped the fragile wine glass as alarm bells began ringing in her head. In all her imagination of what could happen tonight, she had never guessed he would want to know more about her. But why not? She asked herself. She should have known he would be curious. For the past 3 years, she had gradually mastered the art of saying as little about herself as possible. "There is nothing much to tell," she hedged. "Tell me the little there is to tell." "Well, I don't know what else to say. You know my name. You know where I work. You know where I live. What else is there to tell?" She smiled, trying to hide her fears beneath her $1,000,000 smile. "Why do women make such a big deal out of nothing?" he said as aspirated. "Tell me where you come from, where you schooled. Tell me about your parents and siblings." She was saved from answering as the waiter arrived to take their orders. She made a big deal of selecting her food, but she knew when she could not delay any longer. Without knowing or minding what she ordered, after all, the items on the menu were foreign to her. As soon as the waiter left, he turned to her expecting answers to his questions. It was not as if she didn't have the lies she had told people who had asked about her background, but Chuck was different. She loved him, and lying about herself seemed a sacrilege to her. It would taint the wonderful feelings they could so easily evoke in each other. If only he would wait a little longer, at least after her appointment with the specialist. Then she would happily tell him about her. How could she tell him what she didn't know? Then an idea occurred to her. "Please excuse me, I need to go to the ladies," she said to him. She knew their food would be served by the time she returned, and maybe, just maybe, he would concentrate on eating and forget his curiosity about her. Helen heaved a sigh as she watched her reflection in the mirror, but it was not one of relief, but of panic. Walking to the ladies, she had felt all that too familiar foreboding feelings of someone watching her. She had nearly turned back to Chuck, but remembering his curiosity chased her fears away as she walked into the deserted ladies. Every once in a while, she had felt that someone was watching her, but since no one had approached or recognized her, she felt safe. She freshened her makeup, which needed no touch-up at all. She was being ridiculous. There was no one after her. Yes, she was beaten when she was found. But if no one had come after 3 years, it was obvious no one was coming. And she should man up and tell Chuck about her amnesia, since she didn't want to lie to him. Heaving another sigh, she pushed off from the counter and walked out. When she came out, she took a precautionary look around the restaurant, scanning faces. "This is ridiculous," she said to herself. Even if the person after her was sitting in the restaurant, she wouldn't recognize him. Besides, Why would anyone who could afford to eat in this restaurant be after her? With determined footsteps, she walked back to their table. She was almost at their table when she observed their food had been served like she had anticipated. She smiled with relief. No more questions. "Hello," someone said from behind her. "Hi." She turned to look at the owner of the voice. He was a young, distinguished-looking man. He didn't look harmful, Helen thought quickly. The worst ones never do. Her mind whispered back. "Chuck is here," she said to herself. In fact, was observing the scene with mild curiosity. "Hot, long time no see. Where have you been hiding?" Harry said that thing, very much aware Chuck could hear their conversation.
In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you. You're the one I can't let go. In your arms I find my home. Love, sweet love, it's you I'm dreaming of. Every moment with you feels like a gift